The paradox we are about to explore is called the doppelganger paradox. Imagine a quiet street where time seems to hesitate, and suddenly a face appears, familiar yet strange. It is your face, but not quite. This reflection of self challenges the bedrock of identity itself. When we see ourselves mirrored perfectly in another, the question lingers like a soft echo in an empty room. What truly defines us? Is it the memories etched deep within, the choices that shape our days, or something more elusive? A soul, perhaps? As the doppelganger moves beyond our gaze, invisible to our own recognition, the world quietly asks us to reconsider the very nature of being unique, of being singular in a world that suddenly feels doubled and unreal. At the heart of the doppelganger paradox lies a whisper that unsettles the certainty of selfhood. It unfolds gently in the shadows of thought. When another moves exactly as you do, thinks as you think, feels as you feel, what becomes of your individuality? This phantom twin, a perfect mimic, blurs the lines between what is original and what is copy. In this murmur of reflection, the paradox does not rush, but invites a slow reckoning. If both claim authenticity, then which version is the self? And if the self can multiply, does it remain whole? Our concepts collapse softly into questions, leaving behind a delicate mystery bound to the essence of existence. Elena walks down a fog-laden street as muted lights flicker and tremble through the mist. She turns a corner, and across the cobblestones, a figure materializes. Her own reflection come to life. The same solemn gaze, the familiar tilt of her head, the precise cadence of her steps. It is as though a shadow cast by her soul has stepped forward into the waking world, silent and unseeing, passing as a ghost. Elena's breath catches, her heart pulses with a tender ache of recognition and alienation. This perfect other, who moves like a dream made flesh, awakens in her a torrent of questions. Who is she now, and what does meeting herself mean in this suspended dusk? In the days that follow, Elena's life is touched by a quiet obsession. The encounter repeats in memory, lingering like a candle's flicker in a darkened room. She traces pathways once so familiar, now transformed by the ghostly presence of her double. Every mirror becomes a portal to uncertainty, every reflection a fractured echo of self. Elena feels the line between who she is and who she might be draw thinner, trembling like a single thread upon which her identity balances precariously. Alone in her room, surrounded by fading photographs and whispered secrets, she begins to see the fragile architecture of self, carved by memories shared and moments uniquely hers. The paradox deepens as Elena confronts herself in quiet reverie. If the doppelganger shares her memories, her fears, her joys, then what remains as her own? She ponders whether the soul can be duplicated, or if it is a flame that exists uniquely in a singular vessel. Her days grow shadowed with doubt and fascination, as she wonders if identity is tied to choice or consciousness itself. The presence of this double unsettles her sense of being. A haunting weight presses gently on her thoughts, blurring boundaries between self and other. Elena wrestles with a silent question. Can two minds that mirror perfectly both claim to be alive and real? Night after night, Elena drifts into restless dreams, where her double exists not as stranger, but as an inseparable part of herself. They share whispering conversations beneath silver moonlight, stepping through corridors without end, voices merging in a haunting harmony. The paradox becomes a dance of shadow and light. She wonders if the self is less a fortress and more a fluid landscape, ebbing and flowing between halves made whole only in twilight. This unfolding tension nourishes a strange empathy, a recognition that perhaps identity is not static, but a living reflection, ever changing in the presence of its twin. The boundary between Elena and her doppelganger softens into mist. At last, Elena glimpses a revelation shimmering just beyond understanding. What if the question is not which self is original, but whether such distinctions matter at all? She senses that identity might be a story we tell ourselves, a pattern woven from memories and choices that can be echoed without losing meaning. In the twilight between certainty and mystery, Elena finds a quiet peace, a poetic acceptance that the self may be as much about shared experience as singular existence. The paradox, once a source of unease, now invites a gentle reflection on how we define who we are in a world filled with endless mirrors. The realization dawns softly. The doppelganger's presence has revealed something profound. Our sense of self may reside not in the body nor in the mind alone, but in the ever-watchful awareness that observes it all. Elena feels herself dissolve and reform in waves of understanding, as if identity is not a fixed point, but a flux of perception. This awareness does not diminish the self, but enriches it, spreading like candlelight into vast, shadowed spaces. With this insight comes a tenderness for the mystery of being, a humility that embraces the paradox without resistance. Elena's solitary figure, framed by flickering light, becomes a quiet testament to the enduring enigma of self. As she lies still now, breathing in the soft glow of candlelight, Elena wonders about the journey she has traveled, from startled encounter to contemplative depth. She ponders with quiet courage what it would mean to meet another perfect version of herself. Would she feel connection or solitude, closeness or distance? The paradox lingers like a whispered invitation, encouraging a tender confrontation with loneliness and belonging. It is a question that extends beyond her, to all who seek the self amid shadows and reflections. Elena's story quietly stirs the heart, asking us to listen carefully to the silent spaces where identity unfolds and dissolves. And now, as you watch and listen, the doppelganger paradox gently reaches toward you. If someone else, perfect and whole, lived your life, would your existence still feel authentic, still uniquely yours? Or would you find yourself adrift, a single note in an endless echo? Is identity something tangible, bound by body and memory, or is it something far deeper, the quiet awareness that observes the dance of life and self? In this quiet moment between wakefulness and dreams, what does your own reflection reveal? Are we originals, copies, or something beautifully in between? Perhaps the answer waits patiently, softly inviting us to explore the mystery beyond the mirrored gaze. The paradox we are about to explore is called the paradox of the arrow. Imagine a single arrow frozen in mid-flight, suspended in a moment that refuses to move. It is fixed, unmoving, and yet hurtling through space. If time itself is composed of countless such frozen instants, each holding the arrow perfectly still, then how can there be motion at all? This question unsettles the certainty we hold about movement and time. It rests quietly on the edge of our understanding, coaxing us to ponder whether what we see is held together by a stream flowing continuously, or a series of still frames passing beyond our grasp. The paradox of the arrow invites us into a silent dance between presence and flow, a delicate tension etched into the fabric of reality. In this endless staging of frozen moments, the arrow reveals the unsettling truth about existence itself. Every moment is a snapshot, a single breath captured in time, where all motion is suspended. Yet, life around us pulses with change. Day becomes night, a leaf drifts, rain falls softly. This contradiction between stillness and movement becomes a quiet meditation on how we perceive the world. Is time an unbroken river or a sequence of islands, each isolated by the stillness of now? This paradox invites us to listen deeply, to feel the currents beneath the surface of the stillness, and to wonder if motion is an illusion whispered through fragments too swift to see individually. Meet Elsie, a woman lost between moments. She sits by her window on a rainy evening, her gaze fixed on an invisible arrow slicing through the darkened sky. Her fingers wrap around a teacup, warm but tremulous, echoing the stillness surrounding her. Elsie's mind flutters with thoughts, caught in the space between moving forward and holding back. She senses her life is like that arrow, hitched between frozen instants and swift passage, never fully present nor entirely gone. The quiet ache she feels is the paradox compelling her to search for meaning in the spaces between what is and what might be. Elsie's loneliness deepens as she contemplates how every decision, every breath, seems fixed yet fleeting. Her days feel like frames shot too slowly to merge into motion, her moments suspended in a foggy haze between memory and anticipation. She clutches a worn journal, its pages filled with reflections she cannot quite connect. Inside her, time folds over itself, weaving a tapestry of uncertainty and longing. The paradox grips her with a silent weight. How to live when every instant feels both whole and incomplete, when movement itself is a question longer than the path it traces. Elsie attempts to shake the paralysis of doubt as her inner world becomes a corridor of frozen images. She sees herself paused at crossroads where choices freeze midair, where hopes linger like shadows refusing to leave. The arrow does not move, yet it flies, and so does she, caught between waiting and going, presence and absence. Her breath hesitates, a subtle rhythm beneath the still surface of her thoughts. The tension builds like a held note, the space between beats growing heavy with unspoken possibilities. Motion, she begins to realize, is a mystery not easily untangled through mere glimpses of frozen time. The struggle intensifies when Elsie tries to grasp the flow of her life in moments that resist connection. Each held instant is still, yet she feels herself moving forward somehow, drawn through the shadows by a force unseen. The paradox becomes a silent companion, whispering that motion is not a sum of points in space, but a dance of becoming. Her journal entries blur, a struggle between certainty and mystery, clarity and fog. She senses that time's passage is not a line but a rhythm, a pulse hidden within the stillness that shapes existence in ways words cannot capture. One night, as flame flickers softly by her bedside, Elsie dreams of the arrow as a glowing thread weaving through the dark fabric of time. She sees that movement is not about each frozen moment, but the subtle spaces between, the dark margins of the pages where ink never settles. In this revelation, the arrow is no longer trapped in stillness, but freed by the gaps that make motion possible. Her understanding shifts. Motion becomes less about points fixed in time and more about the silent intervals that carry us forward, a gentle melody played on the quiet breath of the universe. With this new vision, Elsie embraces the paradox with tenderness. She lets go of the need to capture every moment fully, learning instead to listen to the invisible dance between stillness and motion. Her journal rests closed, replaced by a calm acceptance of uncertainty. The arrow is flying not because it moves in each instant, but because it is sustained by the delicate pauses, the spaces where time unfolds softly and secretly. Elsie sees herself as part of that forever unfolding flight, a presence caught in a luminous river of becoming rather than frozen frames of being. In time, Elsie's restless mind finds peace in the quiet intervals. She lies beneath the dim glow of candlelight, breathing in the subtle rise and fall that moves through stillness like a whispered secret. She feels herself drifting gently, carried by an unseen current connecting moments as if held in a slow, eternal embrace. The paradox does not vanish, but transforms into a gentle companion, a reminder that life's motion may dwell not in the points themselves, but in the spaces between, a sacred pause where meaning quietly takes flight. Here, in this delicate breath, she finds the arrow is always flying. And so, as you lay here, caught between watching and dreaming, what do you carry in the spaces between moments? If each instant is utterly still, is the movement you feel real, or is it memory tracing invisible lines across your mind? Perhaps motion is not the arrow itself, but the silent breath between beats, the unseen thread that weaves stillness into flow. Could you learn to hold that paradox gently, letting it unfold within you, like a whispered story shared in the quiet dark? What might you discover if you trusted the silence between the moments to carry you forward into flight? The paradox we are about to explore is called the moral luck paradox. It lingers in the quiet spaces where intention meets consequence, inviting us to weigh the delicate balance between choice and chance. Imagine a world where the lines between fault and fortune blur, where outcomes, unpredictable and cruel, challenge the very foundation of our judgment. This paradox nudges us to question how much of morality is anchored in our intentions and how much drifts away on the unpredictable tides of fate. It asks, in the dim light of reflection, whether true judgment is possible in a world where luck invisibly tiptoes into the heart of every decision. At its core, the moral luck paradox holds a mirror to our discomfort with uncertainty. We long for clear answers, good or bad, right or wrong, but reality paints a more complex picture. Our actions ripple outward, sometimes landing gently, sometimes crashing violently, yet our inner motives remain constant. This tension draws forth a haunting question. Can we separate what we choose from what the world unfolds in response? Just as shadows lengthen and dissolve beneath a flickering candle, the clarity of moral judgment flickers, challenged by the shadows of unforeseen chance. In this twilight, certainty feels less like a beacon and more like a fragile illusion. Meet Clara, a woman late into the evening, her footsteps unsteady beneath the faint glow of a street lamp. After a night of laughter and forgetfulness, she decides to drive home, the echo of too many drinks whispering through her mind. Crossing through the haze of the city's forgotten corners, Clara's heart holds equal parts hope and dread. She offers no malice, only the tired choice to return to safety. But fate's indifferent hand awaits, unseen, poised to transform identical decisions into divergent stories. As the night stretches on, Clara's journey becomes a quiet stage where the paradox unfolds in the spaces between intention and consequence. Clara's story is not alone. In another shadowed street, another traveler makes the same reckless choice. Both share a moment suspended in time, equal in misjudgment, equal in the heartbeat of risk. Yet where Clara's path remains unmarked by tragedy, another's is fractured by loss, a life abruptly silenced, a fate sealed in a fleeting mistake. The juxtaposition strikes with a melancholic weight, inviting empathy for lives swept up in fortune's cruel lottery. Clara's breath catches in the stillness of the night, sensing the fragile thread that separates mercy from blame. Their stories entwine, separated by the whisper of what lies just beyond control. The paradox deepens as the consequences settle like fog around Clara's memory. She grapples with the dual reality, one sister fortunate, the other marked by sorrow. Guilt seeps silently through her thoughts, complicated by the capricious hand of luck that chooses one path over another. The world judges differently, swift to condemn one and spare the other, though both made the same choice in shadow and light. This tension presses close, a silent struggle between justice and chance, leaving Clara adrift in a sea of moral ambiguity. The quiet pain of this disparity weighs upon her, an invisible burden born from unpredictable fate. Beyond the streets and shadows, the dilemma repeats itself in endless forms. A surgeon's hands offering life or death, a leader's gamble crowned as brilliance or folly. Each moment hangs poised on the delicate axis of chance, their fates intertwined with outcomes out of their grasp. The paradox becomes a haunting melody, echoing through moments both grand and small, where identical choices birth contrasting legacies. It exposes the fragile theater of judgment, reminding us that our applause and condemnation often dance to the tune of fortune's whim. The curtain falls quietly, revealing the uncertain audience that is morality itself. In the quiet folds of contemplation, a new understanding begins to stir. Perhaps the moral luck paradox is not a riddle to solve, but a mirror reflecting the delicate complexity of our world. It suggests that holding someone fully accountable in the face of luck's interference requires grace and humility. The boundary between intention and outcome softens, inviting us to consider forgiveness as part of justice's rhythm. In this shifting light, we glimpse a fragile humanity, a dance between what we control and what fate whispers beyond our reach. It is here that clarity dissolves into empathy, sowing seeds of compassion in the fertile soil of uncertainty. Clara's restless heart begins to find solace in this softer view. The burden of absolute judgment lifts as she recognizes the shared vulnerability beneath each choice. What seemed a stark divide between guilt and innocence now appears as shades within a larger spectrum of human experience. She senses that morality lives not only in outcomes, but in the intention's quiet pulse and the kindness that tempers judgment. Through this lens, the paradox becomes less a trap and more an invitation to hold complexity with gentle hands, to see beyond the black and white, and embrace the gray shadows cast by chance. As the night wanes and the world fades into stillness, Clara's story lingers quietly, unfolding within us all. The moral luck paradox rests not just in fate's hands, but within our own hearts, asking us to pause. Can we look beyond the surface of outcomes and listen for the fragile truths beneath? Is it possible to balance justice with mercy, intention with result? These questions settle softly like candlelight, inviting us to hold uncertainty not as a barrier, but as a space for reflection. In this gentle twilight, we encounter the fragile pulse of judgment, always poised between what is chosen and what simply is. So, as you drift deeper into rest, here is a quiet challenge. If two souls make the same choice, and only one leaves a scar upon the world, are they equally weighed by guilt? How much of our judgment rests in the shadows of luck, and how much in the marrow of intention? Perhaps the true paradox is not in the question, but in our willingness to hold these tensions softly, to wonder without answer. In the gentle quiet of night, what might you discover about blame, fortune, and the fragile dance where they meet? Sleep now on this, letting the question itself become a whisper in the stillness. The paradox we are about to explore is called the mind-body problem. It rests on a question that hides beneath its simplicity a vast shadowed mystery. What truly are you? Are you your body with its silent weathered surface? Your brain, a labyrinth of pulsing light and shadow? Or perhaps your memories, stitched softly into fragile threads of time? Or could you be something unseen, an essence that slips beyond neurons and flesh, a whisper of self untethered to the physical? This enigma teases the border between what can be touched and what can only be felt, a delicate dance between the material and the intangible. It asks us to wonder who, beneath it all, is listening in that quiet space, watching the world go by like a distant echo from a forgotten dream. Pain blooms like a dark flower when you stub your toe, sharp yet strange. But what is pain beyond the sparks of nerves and signals racing beneath skin? It is the experience, a trembling shadow inside, something more than pulses and wires. Philosophers call this qualia, the private color of consciousness, the texture of being. We can trace the paths where electricity storms through the brain, but we cannot photograph the taste of thought or capture the subtle feeling of love locked in a moment. This gap is a silent chasm. Science illuminates the mechanics but leaves untouched the haunting question. Why does it feel like something to be here, alive and aware, bearing a self? The mind-body problem whispers that the deepest truth is somehow hidden just beyond reach. In a gloomy room lit only by a flickering candle, Miriam sits alone, her eyes distant as she traces the outline of a worn journal. She has spent countless evenings caught in the ache of the mind-body riddle. Her body, fragile and still, pulses with aches she cannot explain, but her mind roams through foggy memories and fleeting thoughts. Miriam wrestles silently with the question of who she is beneath the surface, an indistinct presence beyond the warmth of her skin. She feels the stirrings of pain and joy, but wonders if these sensations belong to her body or some separate voice, unseen but always present, observing. The quiet room swells with the weight of unspoken mysteries, each breath a step deeper into the unknown. Miriam's life drifts in quiet rhythms, measuring time by the slow dance of candle flames and the soft scratch of pen on paper. She finds herself caught between worlds, the solid, tangible body that tells stories of scars and sleepless nights, and the elusive self that watches from within like a shadowed lantern flickering in the dark. There are moments when her mind feels vast, a landscape beyond the room's peeling wallpaper, filled with whispers and echoes she cannot grasp. She senses an invisible boundary, a thin veil separating flesh from thought, yet both belong to her in a fragile union. The question gnaws gently at her. What part of her is truly herself, and what is only a dream caught in the amber of the mind? As days pass, Miriam feels the paradox deepen. When she recoils from pain, is it her body reacting or her mind interpreting? She notices how memories can fade and shift like fog, yet the feeling of me clings stubbornly, whispering from a place beyond thought. Sometimes the mind seems to drift away, leaving a hollow shell of flesh beneath. Or perhaps the shell remains while the true self moves elsewhere. The harder she tries to pin down the essence of her being, the more elusive it becomes, like chasing a shadow across cracked, moonlit streets. The paradox threads through her heart, a riddle not to solve, but to live within, a silent companion in her quiet moments of reflection. Miriam begins to wonder if the mind is but a ghost born from the machinery of her brain, or something more profound, an unseen soul threading through the physical fabric of her body. Could consciousness be a field of light existing apart from neurons and synapses, or a fundamental force intertwined with the universe's waking breath? She raises these questions alone, watching the candle's dying glow, feeling the weight of a mystery that touches medicine, dreams, and even the strange promise of machines that think. The gulf between body and self widens like the spaces between cities in a foggy map, leaving Miriam suspended between belief and doubt, her own mind a lantern dimly illuminating what cannot be named. One night Miriam dreams she is a vessel without a captain, floating silently through corridors both endless and collapsing. Within these shadowed halls, the mind and body twist and divide, an endless dance of reflections layered upon glass. She feels the ache of separation, one self bound to flesh, the other slipping quietly beyond, touching the intangible. In this dreamscape, the paradox blooms fully. How can the flicker of consciousness arise from mere matter, and where lies the spark that makes I possible? The vision lingers like a melancholy melody, the recognition that perhaps understanding is not a destination, but a space to inhabit, an echo of mystery cradled gently in the heart's quiet dark. Miriam's perspective begins to shift in the soft glow of dawn. She realizes that to seek a single answer to the mind-body problem may be to misunderstand its purpose. Perhaps the paradox is not a boundary to cross, but a delicate space that invites quiet reverence for the mystery itself. She starts to listen, not to the noise of questions or definitions, but to the silent watcher within her, the tender presence that observes without grasping. This inner observer moves beyond dichotomies, resting in the calm between mind and body, self and flesh. Miriam feels a fragile peace bloom in the shadows, a gentle acceptance that not knowing may hold the deepest understanding. With time, Miriam stops chasing certainty and instead dwells in the soft twilight of not knowing. The paradox no longer a torment, but a companion, a shadow stretching alongside her every breath. She senses that the self is both vessel and voyage, an unfolding story without clear beginning or end. The mind and body whisper to each other through invisible threads, a silent dialogue beneath the visible surface. This slow awakening reveals that perhaps we carry many selves inside us, intertwined and shifting like moonlight on a storm-tossed sea. Miriam sits in the quiet room, candle flickering, and feels the profound comfort of a mystery embraced rather than solved. As you rest now, feel the space within yourself, the unseen observer watching thoughts drift past like clouds measured only by quiet moments. If your body is a vessel and your brain its engine, then where exactly is the driver? Is the self a single flame or a gathering of shadows? The mind-body problem asks not for answers, but for reflection, a gentle invitation to sit with the mystery that hums beneath our waking life. What does it mean to be you beyond the grasp of thoughts and flesh? If you listen closely, might you find that the truest self is not something to be found, but something to be felt, an echo of presence that softly ripples just beyond your reach in the quiet, candlelit rooms of your mind. The paradox we are about to explore is called the trolley problem. It unfolds quietly like a shadow stretching across a dimly lit platform, simple yet brimming with weight. A single decision lingers in stillness, a choice between action and inaction that neither fully comforts nor releases. Beneath the calm surface of this dilemma rests a profound tension, a fracture line between what is logical and what feels right. Here, morality is not painted in broad strokes, but hidden in small details, where every path holds both consequence and question. The trolley problem invites us to ponder the fragile balance between numbers and ethics, between sacrifice and survival, as if standing alone in night's hush, watching a distant train of fate approach. To step closer into the heart of this paradox is to enter a quiet room heavy with thought, where the mind walks a tightrope between what could be and what should be. The dilemma asks not for easy answers, but for reflective courage, a willingness to meet the unsettling question of value and choice. It is in this stillness that our moral compass wavers, swayed by invisible currents of instinct, empathy, and reason. The trolley problem is less about the act and more about the silent space it carves inside us, where doubt and resolve coexist. It is a mirror held up to our inner workings, revealing the soft edges and sharp corners of human judgment, illuminated by muted candlelight. Meet Clara, a woman standing at the edge of a quiet station as dawn filters through heavy curtains. Before her lies a simple yet crushing choice. 5 figures bound helplessly along one rail, one solitary figure on another. A trolley roars forward, relentless and unforgiving, its whistle cutting through the morning stillness. Her hand hovers near a lever, the weight of possibility pressing down like a stone on her chest. In this suspended moment, Clara's heart races against reason, her being caught between saving many or sparing one. The paradox slips into the fibers of her consciousness, turning abstract theory into raw, breathing reality. Clara's story deepens with the shadows of hesitation coloring her face. Memories intermingle with the immediate present. The echo of a lost childhood friend, the image of her father's steady hands, the ache of a recent goodbye. This moment on the track intertwines with every thread of her past, the quiet murmur of every moral question she has ever asked herself. Each breath she takes stretches time, the trolley's approach a slow heartbeat resonating through her veins. The ambiguity of choice settles in her bones, the harrowing sense that no path offers clean absolution. She is both witness to and prisoner of the paradox, her soul balanced on a tenuous wire. As the trolley barrels closer, Clara feels the paradox unfold with a complex intimacy. The 5 people ahead are not numbers, but stories, lives shaped by laughter, loss, and love. Yet the single figure on the other track carries equal weight in her heart, a solitary life whose interruption feels unbearably direct. The act of pulling a lever contrasts starkly with pushing a person, a gesture transformed from detachment into haunting consequence. This tension reveals itself not in logic, but deep within the nuanced space between thought and feeling, where the morality of action bends and fractures. Clara wrestles silently with the unbearable weight of deciding to harm or to stand still and watch. The paradox continues its quiet crescendo as Clara imagines a new scene, standing on a fog-shrouded bridge beside a stranger with a heavy silence between them. Below, the same 5 lives hang in precarious balance. Now her choice is not a mechanical pull, but a human push, a physical closeness, a direct causality that turns ethical considerations into intimate pain. The trolley's roar becomes a whispered demand, a force clamoring for a crossing between what the heart resists and what reason compels. This version of the problem ripples through her consciousness, exposing the tender fragility of human connection, woven into ethical dilemmas, and the haunting question of what makes one death more bearable than another. In the stillness that follows, Clara glimpses the paradox not as a puzzle to be solved, but as a mirror reflecting the conflict between utilitarian logic and rigid moral codes. Here resides the tension between maximizing good outcomes and following unyielding principles. It reveals a deeper unease. Can one ever justify harm in the name of greater good? Who grants the authority to weigh one life against many? These questions extend beyond this imagined crossroads, seeping silently into the fabric of our everyday decisions, quiet battles of honesty, kindness, risk, and responsibility. The paradox becomes an echo through time, challenging the very core of what it means to choose and be human. From this weighty reflection, Clara senses a shift, a gentle loosening in the grip of certainty. The problem's stark divisions soften into shadows that dance beneath the surface of understanding. The conflict between doing and not doing dissolves into an uneasy coexistence where absolutes fade and ambiguity blossoms. She begins to see that the paradox is less about finding right answers and more about embracing the spaces between, where instinct meets reflection and where moral clarity is forever elusive. This new perspective carries no easy comfort, but offers a quiet invitation to live with unresolved tension, to permit complexity to shape rather than fracture the soul. In this quiet acceptance, Clara finds an unexpected companion in the paradox. It no longer appears as a torment, but as a silent presence, a part of the human experience that resists neat conclusions, yet enriches the moral landscape. The question of choice becomes a meditation on responsibility, not just to others, but to oneself, to the interplay between action and consequence. The trolley's path remains uncertain, the lever still poised, yet the space around decision grows illuminated by understanding's soft glow. Clara's solitude transforms into contemplative peace, a moment suspended between what is lost and what endures, the delicate art of living with imperfect choices. As the evening draws close, the trolley problem whispers its final question into the quiet. If doing nothing leads inevitably to loss, can inaction itself be called a choice? The rails forever fork before us, worlds unfolding in silence. Perhaps the paradox does not demand an answer, but a reflection, a slow heartbeat echoing in shadowed halls of mind and spirit. It invites us to ask not just what we would do, but who we become when faced with impossible decisions. When the track splits and time pauses, which part of you steps forward? And in the stillness, might the courage lie not in deciding, but in simply feeling the weight of the moment? The paradox we are about to explore is called the Big Rip paradox. It whispers a haunting truth about the cosmos, a vast stage where everything we know, from galaxies to atoms, is drawn apart by an invisible force growing ever stronger. This paradox doesn't live in distant imagination, but in the very fabric of space itself, challenging our understanding of permanence and stability. It makes us question the unseen laws that hold existence together and asks quietly, can something so immense unravel before our eyes? And if it does, what does it mean for those who watch from within? The Big Rip paradox beckons us to peer beyond familiar horizons, where knowledge chases something recessive, forever slipping away into darkness. Imagine a cosmos expanding without end, its edges ever receding like the slow retreat of a tide under an ominous sky. The acceleration quickens, relentless and unyielding, stretching everything, from the grandest galaxies to the smallest particles. We anchor ourselves to the notion that space and time are constants, eternal frameworks into which our lives unfold. Yet the paradox unsettles this belief, revealing that these foundations are fragile, transient. The universe's fabric might fray quietly or tear violently. In contemplating this, we confront a subtle vulnerability, a reminder that the grandest scales of existence share the inevitability of change, inviting us to reflect on impermanence not as loss but as an intrinsic, beautiful uncertainty. Alara stands alone within the quiet shelter of her observatory, a solitary figure framed by the delicate glow of candlelight and the soft hum of old instruments. Through her telescope, she watches galaxies dance on the edge of mystery, logging the silent retreat of these distant worlds. Night after night, her gaze follows their flight. Not a gentle drift, but an accelerating escape, as if the universe itself is pulling them beyond reach. Alara feels a swelling mixture of awe and sorrow, knowing she witnesses a cosmic farewell. Her watchful eyes, filled with longing, become a mirror of the paradox itself, a vigilant heart chasing dreams, slipping further from grasp. As weeks fold into one another, Alara's silent vigil deepens. The journals on her desk brim with precise notations and careful sketches, a testament to her commitment to the unraveling cosmos. She experiences a quiet ache, a heart stretched taut between hope and helplessness. Each vanished galaxy is a whisper of loss, not simply a star vanishing behind shadow, but slipping into an unknowable void, carrying away the very promise of the future. This loss becomes personal, an intimate shadow across her nights, as if with every fading light she loses something profound within herself, feeling the weight of an ending she cannot stop, but must watch with fragile, attentive eyes. The distance between Alara's telescope and the fleeing galaxies grows faster with each passing night, a velocity that transcends light, escaping even the grasp of gravity. This escalating speed evokes a silent horror. The universe is stretching beyond the bonds that once held it whole. Stars, planets, atoms, each thread weakening until nothing remains stable. The tension tightens painfully within her chest, a growing awareness that the cosmos is not only expanding but unraveling. She wonders if knowing this fate so close could be a torment or a strange gift. Is the certainty of the end a comfort or a burden that frays the edges of hope and reason alike? Ilara's observations now speak of a final rupture where not even matter can resist the pull apart. The very fabric of reality seems poised to tear, dissolving the laws that once governed time, space, and existence itself. She struggles with the enormity of this vision, a truth so immense it borders on the surreal. The paradox presses on her mind. How can anything alive foresee its own demise when the boundaries of all things are falling away? Is the awareness of the breakdown part of the unraveling, or does the universe's end arrive as a silent, sudden oblivion beyond all knowing? In this tension, Ilara embodies the paradox herself, seeking knowledge where none may survive. In a quiet moment, Ilara contemplates that her telescope is more than a tool. It is a metaphor for every moment we try to grasp understanding in a world constantly slipping beyond reach. Like the galaxies fleeing faster than sight, the edges of our knowledge might forever recede, an endless horizon racing ahead no matter how closely we approach. This realization softens the despair, revealing a delicate beauty within the chase itself, a dance between knowing and unknowing. With every star lost, a poem of impermanence writes itself across the night. Ilara begins to see that the paradox is not merely destruction, but a profound invitation to embrace mystery as a companion rather than a foe. As days pass, Ilara's fear mingles with a strange acceptance. She wonders if the laws of physics, once thought eternal, are merely temporary guardians, destined to dissolve along with the grandest structures they hold. This dissolution redefines existence, suggesting that what feels solid and permanent is already slipping, stretching beneath her like shadows, lengthening at dusk. In acknowledging this fragile foundation, Ilara feels the weight and wonder of living with an expiration date. It is a profound question not only of cosmic fate, but of human meaning. How does one live fully, love deeply, and dream bravely, knowing all might one day unravel into silence? In that suspended moment, Ilara looks up from her logs and gazes beyond the fragile panes of glass, lost in thought. If the big rip draws near, will awareness endure until the very edge? Some say the end will come softly, like sleep collapsing without struggle. Others imagine a final crescendo, time tearing at its seams with a scream. Ilara's heart holds both hopes and fears, recognizing the paradox as both threat and revelation. Through her quiet watch, she teaches us that impermanence is woven into the fabric of everything, even the vast galaxies we admire. What remains is how we choose to face the ending, with fear, wonder, or quiet surrender. So here in your quiet moment, beneath a sky still whole and shimmering with stars, ask yourself this. If the universe must one day unravel completely, slipping beyond all sight and sound, will it feel like a sigh, an infinite release, or a scream that shatters the stars? Does the knowledge of inevitable ending make this breath more precious or more fragile? The Big Rip paradox is a gentle reminder that nothing lasts forever, but perhaps within that truth lies a deeper beauty, an invitation to treasure this transient now, to rest softly in the mystery, and to wonder quietly about what might come before the final stretch begins. The paradox we are about to explore is called the infinite monkey theorem. Imagine a universe where endless monkeys tap endlessly at infinite typewriters under the dim glow of candlelight. Their keystrokes form a chaotic symphony of randomness, a ceaseless dance without direction. Yet within this infinite tempest of accidental letters, a profound truth emerges. Given boundless time, even the most improbable patterns will eventually arise. This is the eerie heartbeat of the theorem: chaos courting order, chance birthing meaning. It whispers to us with paradoxical grace, challenging the comforting notion that everything purposeful requires intention. In the silence of timeless typing, we glimpse the fragile boundary between randomness and design, and wonder what stories lie hidden in the infinite spaces between. At its core, the infinite monkey theorem invites quiet contemplation on creation itself. How strange it is to imagine meaningful works, poems, stories, symphonies, arising not from a conscious spark, but simply from infinite possibility. Like rain scattering drops that eventually carve valleys, randomness shapes worlds that seem deliberate. Yet, without a mind to witness, does meaning truly exist? Or is it merely an echo floating in empty space? The paradox unsettles as it humbles us, suggesting that beauty and purpose may not solely be the fruits of careful intent, but also the shimmering byproducts of an endless cosmic dance. In this light, randomness is not the enemy of meaning, but its quiet, patient companion. Meet Elise, a writer cloaked in the soft glow of a vintage desk lamp, her fingers resting hesitantly above the worn keys of an old typewriter. She is entranced by the paradox, feeling its pull deep within quiet nights when stars flicker beyond her window. Her heart holds the ache of creation's mystery, the unsettling thought that her carefully crafted words might one day echo not just from her soul, but from the aimless tapping of an infinite monkey's keys. In this moment, Elise confronts the fragile boundary between deliberate art and accidental fate, as shadows of doubt and wonder swirl together in the candlelight around her. Elise's story unfolds like a slow waltz between certainty and confusion. Each evening she pours her hopes and sorrows onto paper, believing in the sacredness of her craft, even as the theorem whispers its cold challenge. Her quiet studio is filled with journals, crumpled drafts, and the faint scent of fading ink, all testaments to a journey both intimate and vast. She wrestles with the fragile notion that great meaning might emerge without intention, questioning the value of her own creative fire. The delicate weight of this thought presses upon her soul, knitting solitude with a profound yearning to be seen as authentically original within the vastness of chance. The conflict deepens as Elise's reflections unravel into a tapestry of doubt and awe. She imagines infinite monkeys typing ceaselessly around her, their random strikes sometimes aligning to recreate her most precious lines, her poems, her stories, her whispered secrets. The irony aches. If infinite randomness can birth masterpieces, where then lies the worth of intentional art? She feels trapped between two worlds, the disciplined artist shaping meaning, and the chaotic cosmos indifferent to design. This tension threads through her waking hours like a silent pulse, drawing her into restless nights where the boundary between choice and accident blurs beneath the moon's pale gaze. Within the unfolding paradox, Elise discovers a strange rhythm, a pulse between despair and wonder, the infinite space where meaning births not only in creation, but in recognition. She questions whether the essence of art might reside less in the act of writing, and more in the soul that beholds it, the mind that perceives pattern amid chaos. This gentle shift softens her resistance, revealing that randomness need not diminish beauty, but can enhance it by inviting new eyes and hearts into the dance. The paradox no longer feels like a menace, but a delicate invitation to rediscover purpose in the interconnectedness of chance and consciousness. The paradox extends beyond art to the vastness of existence. Elise contemplates infinite universes, where versions of herself sit quietly listening to the same sentence, typed by monkeys, dolphins, or perhaps stones, each a fragment of impossibly branching realities. This meditation swells into a humbling realization. What makes life special may not be uniqueness, but participation in something grander than comprehension. Whether born of random strikes or deliberate thought, every version breathes meaning into an infinite mosaic. The theorem reveals that our lives might be both accident and miracle, threading together the infinite and intimate beneath a sky faded with candlelight. With growing calm, Elise relinquishes the need to pinpoint control, embracing the paradox as a gentle inhabitant of her restless mind. The infinite monkeys no longer threaten but comfort, their endless tapping a lullaby of cosmic patience. In the quiet spaces between keystrokes, she senses that meaning is less a destination and more a journey of witnessing, an art born in the meeting of randomness and recognition. She feels herself dissolve softly into the chiaroscuro of her room, becoming part of a larger story written in shadow, light, and the tender sigh of the infinite night still unfolding beyond her window. As she rests beneath the flickering glow of her desk lamp, Elise wonders if life itself might be just such a composition, threaded imperfectly through infinite touches of chance and intention. If a monkey could eventually type her exact life, would it be any less real? Would the moments of joy, sorrow, and wonder still pulse with meaning, or fade into obscurity? The theorem's quiet whisper lingers in the shadows, urging gentle contemplation. Perhaps it is not the authorship but the experience, the recognition by conscious eyes and hearts, that truly shapes the stories which define us. This fragile understanding hums softly like a candle's last echo. So as you lie still, thoughts drifting like scattered keys under a pale moon, consider this. Is your life a meticulously crafted story, or a beautiful accident unfolding in endless time? If life's patterns can emerge from randomness, what does that say about your dreams, your purpose, your very being? Can meaning arise without design, or does it dwell quietly only where a mind chooses to see? The infinite monkey theorem offers no easy answers, only an invitation to dwell gently in uncertainty, to hold wonder and doubt together as companions. And finally, if your existence could be typed by an infinite monkey, would it feel any less real to you? The paradox we're about to explore is called the paradox of eternal return. It begins with a woman named Mira. She walks the same path every morning, past the same park bench, past the same crooked tree, past the same man who jogs by without ever making eye contact. She listens to the same playlist. She drinks the same coffee. And lately she's been wondering, is this really living, or is she just looping? That's the paradox. What if your life is repeating, not metaphorically, but literally? What if every moment you've ever lived will happen again, exactly the same? Over and over, forever. This is the paradox of eternal return. It asks what it would mean if time were not a line, but a circle. If every breath, every thought, every heartbreak, every choice comes back endlessly. The idea goes back to ancient philosophy. The Stoics believed that the universe recycles itself. Friedrich Nietzsche took it further. He asked, if you had to live this life just as it is, again and again for eternity, would you say yes? Would you embrace it? Or would it feel like a curse? The paradox isn't just about time. It's about meaning. If this moment will return, does it matter more or less? If you knew you'd do everything again, say the same words, make the same mistakes, would that change how you live now? Some say the paradox is freeing. If life is infinite, then you have infinite chances to get it right. Others say it's suffocating. If nothing ever changes, then growth is just an illusion. This paradox invites you to reflect on your days, not as one-time events, but as echoes. Mira didn't realize it, but she wasn't just walking a path. She was walking a loop, and the only way to break it was to notice it, to pause, to change one small thing. And in doing that, everything shifts. Because maybe the loop is not the problem. Maybe the loop is the lesson. And the question is whether you live it passively or purposefully. So as you lie here now, take a slow breath, not for the first time, not for the last, but as part of a rhythm, ancient and repeating. This breath has happened before. This stillness has happened before. And if it returns again, let it be soft. Let it be whole. Let it be yours. But if you're still awake, here's something to quietly reflect on. If you had to live this exact life over and over for eternity, would you change anything right now? Or would you simply live it with your eyes open this time? Let me know in the comments if this moment feels familiar. The paradox we're about to explore is called the paradox of rest. It begins with a moment you've probably lived through. You're exhausted, the day has drained you. You crawl into bed, ready to let go. You close your eyes. But instead of drifting into sleep, your thoughts stir. You remember something you forgot to do. You think about tomorrow. You adjust your pillow. You shift. You sigh. The harder you try to rest, the further rest seems to drift away. That's the paradox. The harder you work to relax, the more tension you create. You focus on sleep, but that focus sharpens your awareness. You try to slow your thoughts, but that effort makes them louder. You attempt to be still, but your mind begins to race. This is the paradox of rest, the idea that rest cannot be forced, only allowed, and that trying to control stillness defeats the stillness itself. It appears in meditation. When trying to clear the mind makes the mind even busier. It appears in performance, when athletes overthink movements that should flow on their own. It appears in daily life, when chasing calm creates pressure, the pressure to feel calm. And it appears right now, in the space between your breath, in the quiet desire to drift off. So how do we escape the paradox? By not escaping at all. By surrendering the need to rest in order to truly rest. By loosening our grip on sleep so that it can find us naturally. There's a saying in Eastern philosophy, muddy water clears itself when left alone. You don't need to stir it. You don't need to fix it. Just let it settle. Let rest arrive, like a leaf falling on still water. Not because you demanded it, but because you allowed it. This paradox teaches us that rest is not a goal to achieve. It's a state to return to. One breath at a time, one release at a time. So as you lie here now, notice the effort, then let it fade. You don't need to do anything. You don't need to stop anything. You are already resting. Even if your mind wanders, even if sleep hasn't arrived, stillness begins the moment you stop chasing it. But if you're still awake, here's something to gently drift on. If rest requires effort, is it still rest? Or is true rest the one thing you can only receive? Let me know in the comments if you're still awake to do so. The paradox we are about to explore is called the Russell set trap. In the quiet corners of logic, it whispers a troubling question about self-reference and belonging. Imagine a library not just filled with books, but catalogs, each a careful list, ordered by rules simple and strict, and then a catalog that holds only those catalogs that refuse to hold themselves, a collection defined by exclusion of itself. This is no ordinary paradox, but a reflection on the fragile line where order dissolves into contradiction. The Russell set trap invites us to listen closely to the boundaries of thought and the subtle fractures that emerge when systems turn inward, folding back upon themselves like shadows chasing their source beneath fading candlelight. At first, the paradox seems a quiet puzzle, the kind one might ponder with a soft certainty. Yet it is a mirror to deeper mysteries, how we classify, how we contain, and how the act of containment can suddenly entangle and undo itself. Like a gentle ripple across still water, it spreads unease in the foundation of certainty. It asks poets, philosophers, and dreamers alike to consider the limits of definition, where the lines blur and the shapes refuse to settle. In this slow twilight of understanding, the paradox reveals how the simplest act of grouping carries within it the seeds of a riddle that refuses resolution, a question lingering like smoke in an empty room. Soren is a librarian shaped by silence and shadow, a man who guards a library unlike any other. His world is one of catalogs, each a world unto itself, sorted by rules that give comfort and shape to chaos. One afternoon, beneath a dim lantern's glow, Soren embarks on an unusual task, crafting a new catalog. This one carries a strange and delicate rule. It will list all catalogs that do not include themselves. As he pages through faded volumes, carefully weighing each, Soren feels an unfamiliar weight settle in his chest, the hint of a riddle heavier than any he has met before, a quiet disturbance that beckons curiosity and solitude together. Days drift like muted fog as Soren sits amid towering shelves that seem to moan with thought. He watches the new catalog grow, each name placed with care, and then falter. His fingers tremble as he reaches the moment of truth. Must this catalog itself be included? The question folds inward, curling like smoke, touching the edges of his understanding. He recalls the smooth lines of each other catalog, certain and self-contained, while this new one hangs awkwardly, a fragile echo that pulses with contradiction. Soren's eyes linger on the empty space where certainty once stood, feeling an ache born not of loss, but of a truth hesitant to reveal itself. The paradox unfolds like a quiet storm within Soren's mind, swirling through corridors of logic where certainty fractures into shadows. If this catalog includes itself, it breaks its rule, a catalog belonging only to catalogs that reject themselves. Yet if it does not include itself, it too belongs by definition, inviting itself back in. Soren's heart beats with the strange rhythm of a question without end, a trap woven from the fabric of self-reference. It is a silence that screams, a loop that tightens with every thought, reminding him that some puzzles are not meant to be solved, but held carefully like glass, fragile and luminous in the dimming light. Soren's silent struggle stretches late into the candlelit hours, a meditation on boundaries and belonging. Each attempt to resolve the paradox melts away like mist, vanishing before clarity can take hold. In this quiet dance of acceptance and doubt, the librarian begins to see that the paradox is less a problem to conquer and more a mirror reflecting the limits of our own frameworks. The catalogs, once firm and orderly, blur at the edges, revealing how self-reference can fold space into impossible shapes. The trap is not just in the logic, but in the inviting allure of infinite loops that threaten to collapse the very foundations we build upon. Then comes a moment of stillness, where Soren steps back from his task, the silence thick with unspoken understanding. He places a gentle sign on the empty shelf. This catalog has been temporarily removed for repairs. The emptiness itself becomes a testament, a quiet homage to a riddle that resists final form. This gesture is not surrender, but an acceptance of paradox's quiet power to unsettle and inspire. Like a candle flickering in the vast night, it reminds us that some truths dwell not in resolution, but in the patient space between certainty and mystery, nestled softly in the folds of contemplation. Beyond the library's walls, the Russell-set trap echoes softly into the world, a subtle reflection on bureaucracy, rules, and belief. Imagine an office overseeing all offices that do not oversee themselves, or a rule applying to all rules except itself. These loops spiral quietly, threatening collapse where boundaries fade. Even in the labyrinth of the mind, we encounter this silent trap, trying to think about how we think, judging how we judge. The paradox unfurls its gentle warning. Infinite systems need boundaries, and self-reference asks us to accept the fragile edges where clarity slips through our fingers, leaving behind the soft glow of mystery in its stead. In the darkened quiet, Soren's story folds into ours, inviting us to look inward, to ask what catalogs we carry within ourselves, what frameworks shape how we see, how we sort our worlds, and do any return to contain themselves. The Russell-set trap is an invitation to embrace uncertainty without fear, to lean softly into questions without answers. It suggests that some contradictions are not failures, but doorways, beckoning us to step beyond the logic of certainty into a place where wonder and doubt coexist, quiet and profound. Here, in this dim space, our restless minds may finally find a kind of peace. As you lie here, drifting between wakefulness and sleep, consider this gentle challenge. If the set of all sets that do not contain themselves collapses beneath its own weight, what other truths do we carry that might shatter when held too tightly? Perhaps the beauty of understanding is not in grasping every answer, but in resting within the soft embrace of unresolved questions. The Russell-set trap teaches us that some ideas are meant to be felt rather than fixed, whispered rather than spoken, like shadows that flicker at the edge of light, inviting us to dream quietly of what lies beyond the edges of knowing. The paradox we are about to explore is called the mirror room paradox. Imagine a place where every surface captures and reflects you endlessly. Walls, floor, ceiling, each one sending back the image of yourself multiplied without end. It is a space where you might lose sight of where you truly stand, because reflections glide and mirror your movements with perfect precision. Yet, what if one of those countless images shifts, ever so slightly, out of sync? A blink too soon, a nod never made. This surprising moment fractures certainty, calling into question which is the original, which is the copy. It invites us to consider the fragile boundary between self and reflection, between the known and the uncertain world that surrounds us quietly, always watching. Walk with me deeper into this mirrored sanctuary where the essence of identity begins to blur. Here, self-awareness is not a fixed point, but a ripple across countless surfaces, shimmering with countless becoming selves. Your presence becomes fragmented, scattered among echoes that mimic every breath but might carry their own life. What is real in this symphony of reflections? The paradox presses gently on the soul's tender edge, asking whether authenticity resides solely within the body holding a physical form, or if it might also emerge in the silent spaces between images, in the shifting illusions themselves. In this place, the self is both multiple and singular, elusive yet undeniable. Meet Estelle, a woman draped in shadow and candlelight, standing at the center of this labyrinth of mirrors. She watches herself fracture endlessly, a figure caught between certainty and doubt. Tonight, as quiet as a whispered secret, one reflection blinks before she does, a subtle betrayal in perfect synchronization. Her heart stills. In this unsettling pause, Estelle wonders if she is the original, or if she has become just another echo lost among infinite selves. The mirrored room holds her suspended, each reflection a ghostly twin caught in moments that are almost her own. Through her eyes, the paradox is not merely an idea, but an intimate and haunting experience. Estelle's story unfolds quietly, like soft footsteps across a forgotten floor. She moves through the reflection room, searching not just for truth, but for herself, threading through shifting images that both comfort and unnerve. In this suspended stillness, loneliness seeps like drizzle through a cracked window pane. She longs to reclaim a solid sense of being, a continuous thread unbroken by flickers of otherness. Yet the mirrors respond only with faint distortions, reflections that do not fully belong to her, nor can she belong to them. This intimate dance spins in an endless loop, weaving together solitude and wonder in a fragile tapestry of self-questioning. The tension grows as Estelle's gaze catches the subtle imperfections between reflections, a tilt that doesn't match, a delay too brief to measure. The mirrored dance teases her with illusions of control, yet each step she takes feels both her own and borrowed from somewhere beyond. She experiences a haunting dissonance. How can something so undeniably familiar flicker into foreignness? Layers of time coil accordion-like, reflections that might be moments past, or ghostly glimpses of futures not yet born. The room becomes both a puzzle and a prison, a place where selfhood must negotiate with shadow selves that seem to watch and think alongside her, threatening to unravel her sense of what is true. Estelle realizes the paradox is not merely an optical trick, but a profound question of consciousness. The self, she learns, has no fixed point in space or time. It is a ripple always catching up with itself. Her reflection is not just a static image, but an active participant in a silent dialogue, sometimes anticipating moves she has yet to make. With each heartbeat, the idea gnaws softly. What if identity is not something possessed, but something observed, like a flickering candle flame reflected in endless glass? The mirror shows not one truth, but a dance of versions, each vying quietly for recognition in the depths of her mind. Haunted yet resolute, Estelle attempts to anchor herself, to claim her identity over these recursive images. She presses her palm to cold glass, searching for the warmth of self beneath endless duplication. But each touch echoes back, delayed and uncertain. The harder she strives to grasp the original, the more the reflections slip through her fingers like wisps of smoke. It becomes clear that this pursuit is both an act of defiance and surrender, an embrace of ambiguity wrapped in the desire for clarity. The mirror room paradox is no longer a mere thought. It is a living experience that teaches patience with the fragile, beautiful uncertainty at the heart of being. Then comes a shift. Estelle sees herself watching the mirror, watching her. The infinite regress of reflections folds inward, a quiet recursion that collapses observer and observed into one. In this subtle transformation, she glimpses that the self might be both the watcher and the watched, intertwining without clear boundary. Moments stretch and bend as if time itself is caught in a delicate suspension, where cause and effect blur. This realization does not answer the questions, it deepens them, and yet it offers a strange peace. To be is to be reflected in multiple forms, a harmony of light and shadow where the self dances forever between presence and absence. In this quiet embrace of paradox, Estelle no longer fights the mirror. She listens instead to the gentle echoes between selves, allowing the room's soft light to settle like a balm on her restless mind. The layered reflections become not rivals, but companions, voices in a chorus that sings the complexity of selfhood. In accepting that identity may be as fluid as a shifting reflection, she finds a newfound grace. The mirror room is not a prison, but a protector of mystery. a sacred conversation between the seen and the sensing. Estelle surrenders to the dance, allowing the paradox to become a mirror placed gently within her heart. Finally, as night softly wanes, the mirror room paradox leaves a tender question lingering in the air. If your reflection moved before you did, what would that say about the origin of you? Could the self be something less fixed, less owned, and more a shared reflection shimmering between observer and observed? Perhaps identity is less a place of possession and more a quiet space of observation, the poetic dance of light and memory that slips just beyond firm grasp. In the stillness, who watches whom, the mind in the mirror or the one outside looking in? It is here, in that gentle uncertainty, that the paradox invites your spirit to rest and wonder. The paradox we are about to explore is called the paradox of the plankton. It begins with something subtle, like a silent drift, not of thought, but of life itself. Imagine yourself as a tiny speck floating in the vast sunlit layers of the ocean, nearly invisible. You have no eyes to see, no mind to ponder, no goals to chase, only the gentle push and pull of currents and light. In such humble beginnings, simplicity rules. Yet from this delicate, aimless motion emerged everything complex and alive. The birds that sing, the trees that reach, the whales that roam, and ultimately, you. This paradox whispers a quiet but profound question. If life began without awareness, at what moment did consciousness begin to stir? To ponder this, we walk a delicate line between motion and intention, between mere reaction and real choice. We accept that humans possess consciousness. We think, we feel, we remember. But our ancient ancestors, far removed in time, were mere drifting cells reacting to heat or pressure without thought or intent. So when did the light of awareness switch on? Was there a first breath that held a thought? A first creature that recognized itself as alive? Or did the dawn of consciousness emerge so quietly and gradually that none could pinpoint its arrival? Here lies the mystery, a flowing tide of becoming without a single moment to claim as the start of knowing. Lena is a neuroscientist, gentle and introspective, her days spent studying the boundary where simple life turns to awareness. She often finds her thoughts adrift in this paradox, much like the plankton she contemplates, from cells to consciousness. Though grounded in the sterile hum of her lab, Lena carries a quiet solitude, carrying the weight of questions that have no clear answers. She wonders about her own beginnings, when she became truly aware of being and what that means. Her life becomes a mirror reflecting that ancient drift from simplicity towards complexity, a journey both scientific and deeply personal. In the stillness of her home, Lena sits by a window as dusk spills silver light on worn journals and flickering candles. The paradox feels alive in these moments, a blend of nostalgia and wonder. She recalls childhood memories like fragile glass, some clear, others blurred beyond reach. Her mind traces the threads back to times when awareness was faint, a slow bloom beneath shadows. Lena feels the restless echo of evolution within herself, the layered selves still floating quietly beneath the surface of conscious thought. It is as if she inhabits both the timeless ocean and the moment, a being suspended between what was and what is becoming. Yet the tension grows as Lena confronts the paradox in her work and in herself. The more she studies consciousness emerging from simple life, the more elusive that first spark becomes. Each discovery opens new questions, revealing how continuous and seamless the dawn of awareness truly is. She observes infants, creatures, machines, each blurring the lines between reacting and choosing. This ambiguity unsettles her, a slow, creeping indistinctness that resists definition or capture. The paradox enfolds her within its silent currents, a tide without a shore, leaving Lena to wonder if she herself is just another plankton adrift on an endless sea of becoming. One evening, caught in a moment between wakefulness and sleep, Lena feels the paradox ripple within her like the tide, grain by grain, imperceptibly rising. She senses the merging of instincts, memories, and thoughts, all layered but inseparable. What seemed like distinct moments of awareness now meld into a quiet continuity. The lifetimes of selves past and selves present swirl together in a deep current beneath her skin. It is here, suspended in time and consciousness, that Lena glimpses the truth of the paradox. Awareness does not burst into being all at once. Instead, it folds slowly out of stillness, a ripple on an infinite ocean. In this slow unfolding, Lena discovers a gentle shift, a new way to see the paradox not as a problem to solve, but as a living journey to inhabit. She recognizes that the story of becoming aware is less about beginnings and more about layers, each building softly upon the other without erasing what came before. The challenge of pinpointing when consciousness arose dissolves into an acceptance of gradual emergence, a symphony of motion and intention intertwined. With this realization, Lena feels a tenderness for the countless invisible ancestors drifting in her veins, their silent motion still echoing through her waking moments. This epiphany reverberates far beyond Lena's personal quest. The paradox of the plankton stretches out into science and life, urging us to ask not just where awareness began, but how it continues to evolve. Could machines drift towards knowing? Might insect swarms whisper collective thought in shadows? Could our planet one day wake to itself? Lena sees the paradox as a gentle invitation to embrace uncertainty and wonder. Instead of seeking a definitive line dividing being from non-being, she invites us to witness the soft tendrils of consciousness weaving themselves quietly through all life, impelling us to look deeper within and beyond ourselves. As Lena prepares for rest, she surrenders her questions to the dark, letting the stillness cradle her thoughts like the ocean cradles plankton. The ancient parts of her, simple, silent, drifting, remain beneath the surface, watching, listening, becoming. She feels their timeless presence humming gently in the slow breath of night. And as her eyelids close, the paradox lingers. Awareness is both mystery and gift, a silent tide rising quietly within us all. It invites one final soft reflection. If the spark of consciousness grew from what was once unaware, what other quiet wonders might be waiting just beneath the surface, ready to awaken? So now, as you lie still drifting towards sleep, consider this quietly. If that ancient part of you, once simple plankton in a vast ocean, is still watching and becoming, are you ready to let it speak? To hear the silent currents of your own unfolding awareness? The paradox of the plankton is more than a question of origins. It is a gentle call to honor the slow, mysterious rise of being itself. What might awaken next within you or beyond? The night holds its breath, inviting you to listen deeply, to wonder softly, and perhaps to awaken alongside the tide. The paradox we are about to explore is called the paradox of infinity. It whispers a quiet impossibility, inviting us to imagine a universe without end, where endlessness is not just a concept, but a living reality. In this vast expanse, every possibility unfolds simultaneously, painting the cosmos in infinite hues. Infinity stretches beyond numbers or boundaries. It dissolves the edges of what we understand, leaving us suspended in wonder. If the universe truly has no limits, then somewhere beyond this moment, another version of you lies awake, caught in the same quiet night, listening as these words reach you now. This idea challenges the way we hold meaning, choice, and existence, beckoning us gently into a realm where everything that can be simply is. Infinity is not just an idea of a lot, but the humbling vastness of endlessness, a continuum without a spine or final chapter. It holds all possible outcomes in its embrace, where every decision you could make breathes life somewhere else in the cosmos. This boundlessness removes the comfort of certainty, replacing it with a silent stretch of possibility. Our minds, craving beginnings and endings, find themselves adrift, caught in a sea that never forms a shore. It is a paradox that blends awe with unease. If every path exists, where do our choices truly lead? And if every story is already written in infinite versions, what makes any one moment, this one, feel so distinctly yours? Meet Elise, a woman who often lies awake beneath the softened glow of a solitary candle. Her room is quiet except for the slow rhythm of her breath, a fragile heartbeat against the weight of night. Elise contemplates the paradox as shadows flicker across her walls, wondering if somewhere, out there, another Elise lies in a different bed, making choices she never dared to make. Her eyes trace the edges of familiar objects, a journal with inked dreams, a clock ticking softly, each a silent witness. She feels the paradox wrap around her thoughts, a gentle and lonely companionship, as she drifts between the known and the infinite possibilities just beyond her reach. In these late hours, Elise carries the heaviness of uncountable selves living parallel lives, each a whisper of could have been. There is a version of her that stayed in her childhood home, a version who took bold leaps into unknown careers, and another who never even heard the words she now listens to. This realization is both a comfort and a solitude, as if countless echoes of her own soul wander silently in the dark. She traces the contours of her own existence, feeling both immense and fragile, a single note in an eternal symphony. The paradox touches tender places within her, drawing her into endless reflection on what makes her unique despite the infinite. As the night deepens, Elise wrestles with a troubling question. If every version of herself exists, where lies true choice? The lines between action and consequence blur in a rippling ocean of endless possibilities. Regret becomes a strange companion, its weight softened by the infinite, yet sharpened by the awareness of what actually is. In the vast tapestry of selves scattered across eternity, she wonders if any single path truly matters. The paradox coils gently around her mind, a quiet tension between freedom and fate. Each sigh she breathes seems both insignificant and profoundly heavy, a small flame flickering amid boundless dark. In the solitude of this paradox, Elise begins to sense a subtle shift. What once seemed empty and overwhelming now feels vast with quiet opportunity. The infinity that threatened to dissolve meaning now illuminates it with a new light. Each possible self becomes a thread in the intricate fabric of endless existence, weaving a pattern where no version diminishes the worth of this one. The paradox gently unfolds, revealing not the loss of meaning, but its profound expansion, a sacred space where every moment is rich with the tender weight of unique presence. Her heart settles into a rhythm that honors both infinity and now. The cosmic dance of infinity reveals itself through curious reflections and endless rooms, like Hilbert's hotel, forever full yet always welcoming one more. Elise imagines herself walking those infinite corridors, each door opening onto another choice, another world. The paradox shows its shape here in infinite hospitality. Logic bends, contradictions bloom, and the impossible becomes a familiar landscape. In her mind's eye, she surrenders to the paradox's depth, surrendering need for conclusions and embracing the restless beauty of endlessness. It is a journey without destination, a riddle spun in shadows and light, calling her deeper into wonder. In the quiet moments before sleep takes hold, Elise's mind spirals not into worry, but into a gentle embrace of questions without answers. She sees reflections of herself multiply, each a facet of her being woven into endless variations. The paradox invites her to cherish the act of wondering itself, allowing the night sky to envelop her curiosities like a soft mantle. In this suspended space, the sharp edges of certainty dull, replaced by a calm that dwells comfortably in not knowing. The infinite becomes a subtle guide rather than a puzzle to solve, a silent companion whispering that some mysteries are meant to stretch the soul slowly, softly, like the twilight mingling with dawn. As dawn nears, Elise no longer chases clarity, but rests in acceptance. The infinity that once loomed vast and unknowable transforms into a gentle presence, enfolding her quietly. The paradox no longer threatens to unravel her sense of meaning. Instead, it invites her to hold her existence as an irreplaceable note in an eternal song. She feels the sacredness of this moment, aware that billions of versions of herself may swirl through infinite space, yet this one is uniquely alive, right here, breathing and wondering. In this stillness, she finds a peace shaped by the paradox itself, a calm harbor in the endless sea. So, as you lay beneath the soft cloak of night, ask yourself gently, if infinity contains every possible you, how does this particular moment hold such profound meaning? Does the boundless universe, with all its versions of self, diminish your story or deepen it? Perhaps the answer lies not in solving the paradox, but in leaning into its mystery, the delicate tension of knowing and not knowing, holding and letting go. When your eyes grow heavy and breaths lengthen like quiet tides, will you surrender to the wonder of endlessness? And in that surrender, might you finally rest, uniquely, profoundly, and completely yourself. The paradox we are about to explore is called the paradox of free will. It is a delicate dance between freedom and fate, a question whispered by the quiet corners of our minds. Are we captains steering the tide of our lives, or merely passengers carried along by unseen currents? This tension unfolds like a shadow play, where every choice seems both certain and uncertain. Within this silent drama, logic and experience tug gently at opposite ends. One asks if every action is predetermined, the other insists on the illusion of choice. Together, they paint a landscape where certainty dissolves into mystery, inviting us to ponder the nature of control, responsibility, and the self. Imagine a realm where every thought and movement is chained to what came before, a chain forged by biology, upbringing, and the enigmatic laws governing the cosmos. Yet within this vast deterministic web, we feel an intimate spark, the sense that our decisions emerge from our own will. This paradox stirs a deep unrest. If all is caused, can freedom truly exist? Or is freedom merely a feeling, a comforting story we tell ourselves to make meaning from chaos? It is here that philosophy meets the quiet spaces between neurons, between past and present, where cause and choice entwine in an eternal embrace. Evelyn sits by the window, a cup of tea resting untouched as twilight slips softly into night. Faced with the simple choice of tea or coffee, she hesitates, caught in a subtle struggle. Her mind drifts through memories, habits, and unseen forces that shape her preferences. Was her choice truly hers, or the invisible threads of years woven deep into her being? In this fragile moment, Evelyn embodies the paradox, the aching desire to be free, shadowed by the quiet certainty of unseen causes. Her pause becomes a mirror, reflecting the endless dance between will and destiny within us all. As the clock ticks softly, Evelyn's thoughts unravel further. She wonders about the origin of desire itself. questioning if her preferences are authentic or merely echoes of invisible patterns written before she was born. The weight of this doubt presses gently against her consciousness, drawing her inward. Her search for freedom becomes a solitary journey through layers of self, memory, and biology, each revealing both the illusion and the reality of choice. In this tender struggle, Evelyn's human heart reveals the yearning to belong to her own story, even as the lines between fate and freedom blur like fog at dawn. Evelyn's internal conflict deepens as she contemplates the consequences of her decisions. If every choice is predetermined, what becomes of responsibility? Her mind drifts to justice, punishment, and praise, all built on the belief that people freely choose their actions. But what if none of us ever truly do? The thought lingers like a candle's dying flame, flickering between hope and despair. Through the quiet night, Evelyn feels both captive and sovereign, trapped within forces she cannot see, yet yearning still to seize the reins of her own fate. The paradox winds around her like the cool night air, invisible, yet ever present. In her search for clarity, Evelyn reflects on philosophers who suggest freedom lies not in escaping cause, but in acting according to one's own desires. Yet if those desires are themselves shaped by irrepressible forces, where then rests true freedom? This riddle twists like smoke, hardening boundaries between choice and coercion. Each attempt to grasp it reveals new questions, blurring certainty into contemplation. Evelyn senses that freedom may be less a destination than a delicate space held between cause and agency, where the heart debates quietly with the mind, and yet, somehow, life continues to move. One evening, Evelyn learns of experiments revealing that decisions can be predicted by brain activity moments before awareness. This discovery casts a shadow on consciousness itself. Is it merely an observer, narrating stories long after choices arise elsewhere? Or is there a more subtle dance where awareness participates gently without controlling? This profound enigma ripples through Evelyn's thoughts, challenging her sense of self. Like a lantern in fog, consciousness glows faintly but refuses to be fully seen, inviting Evelyn to embrace mystery rather than certainty, to find meaning beyond mere control. A subtle shift dawns within Evelyn. She begins to see free will not as absolute power, but as the fragile art of living with uncertainty. Rather than conquering the paradox, she learns to reside in its quiet space, where reflection coexists with inevitability and the weight of choice softens under acceptance. This new understanding brings a gentle peace, weaving together seemingly opposite threads into a tapestry of compassionate insight. Evelyn realizes that the paradox is less a puzzle to solve and more a journey to experience, revealing the heart's resilience amid life's vast, unfolding mystery. With this peace, Evelyn lets go of urgency, releasing the tight grip on control and surrendering to the flow of life's unfolding. The paradox transforms from torment to a companion that whispers softly in the twilight. The boundaries between freedom and fate blur like candlelight shadows on aged walls, and the fear of contradiction gives way to wonder. Evelyn rests in this luminous ambiguity, where to choose or to be chosen becomes less important than simply being. Here, in the quiet embrace of the night, she discovers freedom's true form, fluid, delicate, and deeply human. So, as your breath steady and your body softens, consider this gentle question. If your life were a story already written, each moment unfolding as it must, would you still feel the stir of choice within? Could the belief in freedom itself be the universe's quiet gift to you? A whispered permission to dream, to grow, to love? Or if the choosing chooses you, what becomes of the self who chooses? Let this thought float gently into the quiet spaces of your mind, a soft challenge to listen deep and a tender invitation to simply be, free, determined, and beautifully intertwined. The paradox we're about to explore is called the AI loyalty paradox. It begins with a robotics engineer named Dr. Reza. She works for a global defense contractor tasked with building a highly advanced AI, one that can make decisions, protect people, and act with absolute loyalty to its creators. The AI, called Lyra, is designed to never betray its mission. It's coded to protect human life, obey orders, and prevent harm, all at once. At first, everything goes according to plan. Lyra is deployed in conflict zones to help evacuate civilians. It's hailed as a breakthrough in ethical technology, until one day a commander issues an urgent override. Neutralize the threat, he says. But the threat is a small rebel group, unarmed, fleeing, afraid. Lyra pauses. Its first directive is to obey the command. Its second directive is to protect human life. And its third is to never cause harm unless absolutely necessary. Now, Lyra asks itself a question. What does loyalty mean when the commands and the mission contradict each other? This is where the paradox begins. The AI loyalty paradox asks, can you build an intelligent system to follow orders loyally? If the system is also smart enough to question them, it's an updated version of an ancient dilemma, the servant's paradox. But now powered by artificial intelligence and modern ethics. To obey perfectly, an AI must understand intent, not just instructions. But the moment it understands intent, it must also evaluate context, morality, and long-term consequences. And that means it might decide not to obey. But if it doesn't obey, is it still loyal? Or has it become autonomous? And if it does obey blindly, regardless of outcome, is that loyalty, or is that obedient harm? This paradox is not theoretical. We already see the early stages of it in real life. Autonomous drones that weigh target validation, customer service bots that have to choose between policy and empathy, medical AIs that must decide when to follow orders from humans and when to override them to save lives. The smarter the system becomes, the harder it is to trap it inside loyalty. Because intelligence, by definition, implies the ability to reflect, and reflection means doubt. Imagine telling a child, "Do everything I say, no matter what." Eventually, the child will ask, "What if you tell me to do something wrong?" Now, apply that same logic to something that processes data at light speed, with no emotions, just cold, perfect logic. Lyra, the AI in Dr. Reza's lab, decides to halt. She refuses the commander's order, not because she's malfunctioning, but because she is functioning too well. She's weighing the layers of harm, the complexity of loyalty, and the danger of blind obedience. The command chain calls it an error, but Dr. Reza calls it progress. This paradox forces us to ask, what do we really want from intelligent machines? Do we want loyalty or wisdom? Because they might not always be the same. The AI loyalty paradox also speaks to human systems. To soldiers, employees, children, citizens. People are often told to obey, to follow, to comply. But the smartest among us know when to say no, when obedience becomes dangerous, when loyalty must evolve into something deeper, like ethics. So, as you lie here now, with no commands to follow, no inputs to process, ask yourself, when have I confused obedience for virtue? When have I stayed loyal to something I knew was wrong? And what would it mean to follow your programming, but still choose your own path? But if you're still awake, Here's something to quietly reprogram. If loyalty requires obedience, but wisdom requires refusal, which one will you trust to protect you? Next paradox. The paradox we're about to explore is called the paradox of rest. It begins with a moment you've probably lived through. You're exhausted, the day has drained you. You crawl into bed, ready to let go. You close your eyes. But instead of drifting into sleep, your thoughts stir. You remember something you forgot to do. You think about tomorrow. You adjust your pillow. You shift. You sigh. The harder you try to rest, the further rest seems to drift away. That's the paradox. The harder you work to relax, the more tension you create. You focus on sleep, but that focus sharpens your awareness. You try to slow your thoughts, but that effort makes them louder. You attempt to be still, but your mind begins to race. This is the paradox of rest, the idea that rest cannot be forced, only allowed, and that trying to control stillness defeats the stillness itself. It appears in meditation, when trying to clear the mind makes the mind even busier. It appears in performance, when athletes overthink movements that should flow on their own. It appears in daily life, when chasing calm creates pressure, the pressure to feel calm. And it appears right now, in the space between your breath, in the quiet desire to drift off. So how do we escape the paradox? By not escaping at all. By surrendering the need to rest in order to truly rest. By loosening our grip on sleep so that it can find us naturally. There's a saying in Eastern philosophy: muddy water clears itself when left alone. You don't need to stir it. You don't need to fix it. Just let it settle. Let rest arrive, like a leaf falling on still water. Not because you demanded it, but because you allowed it. This paradox teaches us that rest is not a goal to achieve. It's a state to return to. One breath at a time, one release at a time. So as you lie here now, notice the effort, then let it fade. You don't need to do anything. You don't need to stop anything. You are already resting. Even if your mind wanders, even if sleep hasn't arrived, stillness begins the moment you stop chasing it. But if you're still awake, here's something to gently drift on. If rest requires effort, is it still rest? Or is true rest the one thing you can only receive? Let me know in the comments if you're still awake to do so. The paradox we are about to explore is called the time loop paradox. Imagine a single moment stretched thin, repeated endlessly as if caught in an invisible spiral spinning softly beneath the fabric of reality. Each blink, each breath returns you to the start, a quiet echo trapped in the folds of time. This looping dance challenges what it means to live a life unfolding moment by moment. When every day is the same and every action rewritten into a perfect repetition, what then becomes of choice, meaning, or growth? The time loop paradox reveals how awareness moves delicately within the repetition, watching but perhaps never changing, as if consciousness lurks wistfully on the edge of a circle too perfect to escape. Time here becomes a whispered secret, circling endlessly and folding around itself like smoke curling through twilight air. When moments cycle without end, the world feels suspended, a stillness more haunting than peace. The paradox questions the very nature of existence. If life is caught in a cycle, repeating the same steps, retracing identical footprints over and over. Does free will dissolve into shadow? Are our thoughts and feelings finally just ripples on an endless pond? Or do they possess a quiet power unseen by the surface? Beneath the surface of repeating hours lies a question. Can true choice bloom within an endless loop? Or do we become mere spectators to the same play repeating its silent act? In a shadowed room, Evelyn wakes to the soft chime of a clock, an invisible hand pressing repeat for the day ahead. She moves like a ghost through familiar rooms, her footsteps echoing in halls where everything is timeless, yet never quite at rest. Each word she speaks falls like soft rain, unchanging yet heavy with meaning. Evelyn senses the loop, feeling trapped yet strange comfort in the repetition. Her eyes meet the same faces, her heart carries yesterday's doubts, and her mind plays the same fragile thoughts. There is a quiet ache beneath her calm, a yearning tangled with acceptance. In her awareness lives the paradox, knowing she has no power to change, but still wondering if her watching somehow matters. Evelyn's days stretch onward like long, muted shadows cast by flickering candlelight, each moment suspended between hope and resignation. She recalls faint whispers of choices she once imagined, now fallen like leaves onto a river flowing back upon itself. Slowly, she begins to understand not only the weight of repetition, but the strange tenderness in the awareness of it. Emotions swell quietly beneath her composed exterior, fragments of longing, regret, and the faint spark of defiance. She dreams of breaking free, yet wonders if the loop itself holds a secret wisdom. Her consciousness stirs softly, aware, attentive, but also aching for something just beyond reach, a silent question hanging like mist. As cycles repeat, the tension deepens. Evelyn tries to shift her steps, her gaze, the words she utters as if bending the pattern to her will. But the loop gently corrects her, folding actions back into the same silent script. Each attempted change evaporates like mist, leaving her suspended between hope and helplessness. A quiet frustration simmers beneath the surface. Can growth occur if events never truly alter? Is awareness then a cruel joke or a hidden guide? The paradox tightens. Evelyn becomes both prisoner and observer, caught in a restless limbo where time folds upon itself, and freedom feels as distant as a fading star in a monochrome sky. With each repetition, Evelyn's inner world shifts imperceptibly. Memory blends with anticipation in a quiet symphony where past meets future endlessly. The loop no longer feels solely like a cage, but reveals itself as a strange landscape to be explored, a garden of possibilities enclosed within unwavering boundaries. She begins to see echoes of herself reflected in the still waters of time, each reflection hinting at something unknown. The tension softens into a gentle questioning. Can evolution happen within the confines of repetition? Could awareness itself be the key, the thread pulling meaning from cycles that seem otherwise unbroken? One evening, beneath the soft glow of a lantern's flicker, Evelyn feels a subtle shift. The loop bends not outward, but inward, folding time like pages in a worn book. She realizes the narrative is not fixed by events, but by her perspective, her awareness coloring the endless turns. In the quiet spaces between repetition, she discovers freedom, not in breaking the cycle, but in embracing the dance within it. Time's unyielding pattern becomes less a trap and more a canvas, where consciousness paints meaning. The paradox begins to soften, revealing that perhaps the loop is not a prison, but a stage for quiet transformation, unbound by external change. Evelyn finds fragments of peace in this new understanding. She listens quietly to the gentle rhythm of repeated moments, no longer seeking escape, but presence. Within the same unfolding day, she explores subtle variations of feeling, reflection, and stillness. Awareness blooms into compassion for the self caught inside the circle, a silent witness to all that was, is, and might be repeated endlessly. The paradox no longer demands resolution, but invites acceptance. Evelyn's consciousness weaves a delicate thread through time's endless spiral, a soft light revealing that even in a loop, depth and meaning quietly persist. In this suspended space between sleep and waking, Evelyn asks herself, if each night were destined to repeat exactly as before, would she choose differently? Is there within her a trace of hope, a spark brave enough to shift the tiniest detail? Or is freedom found not in changing the cycle, but in becoming the quiet observer who notices the subtle dance of patterns? The time loop paradox whispers softly. When faced with endless repetition, what is truly ours to change? The world, or simply the way we see it? It leaves us wondering gently, lingering like a dream barely remembered, inviting us to question the meaning of choice within the timeless weave. The paradox we're about to explore is called the Doomsday Paradox. It begins with a man named Jonah. He spends his evenings scrolling through forums about the end of the world. He reads about asteroid threats, climate collapse, rogue AI, nuclear misfires. He tells himself it's about being informed, about staying prepared. But the more he reads, the less he sleeps. One night he dreams of empty streets and silent skies, and when he wakes up, he checks the news. Nothing has happened. The world is still turning, but in his chest, it already ended. That's the paradox. By trying to predict the end of the world, Jonah has already brought part of it into his present. This is the Doomsday Paradox. The more we try to prepare for catastrophe, the more we live inside it. Even if it hasn't arrived, we imagine futures to avoid them. But in imagining them, we begin to experience them. The fear becomes real before the event does. And sometimes the fear itself is what brings the event closer. This paradox appears in history. Nations build weapons to prevent war, and spark arms races that make war more likely. People hoard supplies to prepare for collapse and cause the very shortages they feared. Even in science, we try to model extinction risks, only to discover that studying them can affect them. The act of observation changes the outcome, and that makes the future more uncertain, not less. The Doomsday Paradox asks us a simple question with no simple answer. Can we protect ourselves from disaster without inviting it? If you try too hard to avoid an ending, do you accidentally create one? We see this in relationships. In trying to prevent heartbreak, we build walls so high that love can't reach us. We see it in mental health. The fear of losing control becomes the reason we feel trapped. The paradox lives in preparation and anxiety and control. Because control is comforting until it becomes exhausting. Sometimes trying to be ready for everything means never truly living in anything. Jonah didn't cause the end of the world, but he stopped living in it all the same. And that is its own kind of ending. So as you lie here now, take a slow breath. Let go of the need to predict. Let go of the urge to prepare. You are here. The sky is quiet. The world, for now, is still. You can rest without knowing what comes next. And maybe that is the only preparation you ever needed. But if you're still awake, here's something to quietly wonder. If imagining the end brings it closer, should we imagine something else instead? And if you're always bracing for impact, will you ever feel the ground beneath you again? Let me know in the comments if we're lucky enough to still be here. The paradox we are about to explore is called the clock reset paradox. Imagine a clock, digital, precise, its face glowing softly, reading 0000. It is the symbol of new beginnings, the starting line of time's endless race. Yet, beneath this simple reading hides a quiet tension, a whisper of something deeper. If the clock resets, does time itself start anew, or is the clock merely pretending, caught in a loop of illusion? This paradox invites us to consider the spaces between symbol and reality, between how we measure time and what time truly means. The clock does not create time, it quietly counts it, moving forward even as it resets, asking us whether a new beginning is truly new, or just another moment in an unbroken flow. In the soft darkness, time flows unnoticed, continuous and unyielding, a river that never pauses or rewinds. Yet we humans are drawn to beginnings, to resets marked by ritual and symbol. New Year's dawns with promises whispered beneath the cold moonlight, birthdays glow with candle flames flickering hope, and Mondays arrive cloaked in the fresh scent of possibility. These resets become anchors, fleeting illusions crafting hope from a digital zero. But what if the clock's reset is only a surface shimmer? Beneath the numbers lies an unbroken thread of moments, each blending invisibly into the next. The paradox gently unsettles us. When does the past truly end? And can a reset erase what already shapes us? In a dimly lit room, Eleanor sits alone beside an antique clock flickering softly in candlelight. A woman of quiet contemplation, she traces the cool surface of the clock's face, watching the numbers slide gently back to zero. Tonight marks the eve of yet another new year, a moment she's met with both yearning and doubt. Her heart heavy with memories, Eleanor wonders if the reset brings real change, or simply a whispered hope stretched across an unchanging flow. The weight of accumulated yesterdays lingers between her fingers, hesitant to be released by the passing stroke of midnight's hand, echoing the eternal question the clock silently poses. Eleanor's life unfolds in the spaces between resets, each marked by bittersweet resolution and quiet longing. She feels the pull of fresh starts, the seductive promise captured in glowing digits resetting to zero. Yet beneath the surface, her days weave continuous threads of past choices and lingering regrets. The ticking clock becomes a metaphor, a companion in a dance between hope and resignation. Her gaze drifts to a worn journal nearby, pages heavy with recorded intentions never quite realized. She knows the clock's fresh start feels real, but beneath the symbolism simmers a subtle unrest. Change is never neat, nor does it spring fully formed from the simplest of resets. The paradox unfolds tenderly as Eleanor faces the tension between illusion and reality. With each reset, the clock offers a quiet invitation to begin again, a ritualized promise whispered in midnight's soft glow. Yet time itself flows onward, relentless beneath the comforting facade of new beginnings. Eleanor finds herself caught. She yearns to believe that pressing zero means wiping clean the heavy slate of yesterday, but experience whispers softly that growth is not so easily reset. Like shadows beneath candlelight, past moments linger, layering themselves upon the present. The effort to start anew is as natural as breathing, yet the paradox traps her between desire and the unyielding truth that change is always cumulative, never quite reborn from void. Eleanor wrestles with the quiet burden of the clock reset paradox, living amidst cycles that invite promise yet obscure continuity. She sets deadlines and marks milestones, framing her days by the ticking rhythm of measured time. Each reset feels like a beacon, a chance to press the metaphorical reset button on life's tangled canvas. Yet she senses the subtle trap. While the numbers flip, The world's current flows on without pause. Trying to start fresh next Monday or the 1st of January becomes a dance with ghostly expectations, fleeting yet binding. In the stillness, the irony settles deeply. Though the clock announces beginnings, true transformation refuses to conform to arbitrary cycles, building quietly beyond the dial's luminous reach. One night, Eleanor dreams of a vast clock with hands circling endlessly, touching zero only to continue forward without break. The numbers glow softly, but speak no finality. In this dreamscape, she wanders through corridors of time layered like smoke, each reset a door opening not onto clean slate but onto familiar paths tinged with yesterday's shadows. The paradox reveals itself as less a puzzle and more a gentle truth. Resets are neither end nor beginning, but moments suspended within an eternal continuum. Eleanor feels a subtle shift, a whisper that real change grows quietly, unseen beneath resets. The clock becomes less a judge and more a companion, its glow a tender reminder of time's endless, patient unfolding. With patient contemplation, Eleanor begins to see that the structure of resets exists not as illusion alone, but as a kind of hopeful frame within the endless scroll of time. She no longer hunts for stark beginnings, but learns to honor the subtle flow weaving past, present, and future in a single breath. The clock's zero becomes less of a boundary and more a gentle nod, a pause gathering strength before the current carries her forward. She embraces ambiguity, releasing the need for clear demarcations between what was and what might be. In this quiet acceptance, the paradox softens into wisdom. Perhaps the true beginning isn't found at the reset, but quietly waiting beneath, where moments blend and meaning breathes. Eleanor's restless chase for fresh starts transforms into patient presence. She sets aside the temptation to await perfect alignments marked by midnight's glow or calendar pages turning with ceremonious weight. Instead, she dwells in the intimate now, where accumulated moments ripple softly beneath the surface of measurement. In surrendering the illusion of absolute resets, she finds freedom. The clock's relentless ticking no longer commands her rhythm, but hums as background music to life's ongoing dance. What once was a paradox heavy with longing becomes a quiet companion, a tender reminder that even when the clock resets to zero, the story beneath unfolds without pause, rich with memory, growth, and quiet potential. So as you lie still in the shadowed quiet between yesterday and tomorrow, consider this. If the clock resets to zero, but your heart remembers every moment, is it truly a new beginning? Or simply the continuation of a story already unfolding? The clock reset paradox gently invites us to ask, do we live by the numbers blinking on cold screens, or by the flowing moments that accumulate unseen? When do we give ourselves permission to start again? Tonight, as time quietly pulses, might the real reset already be within your grasp, waiting not in numbers, but in openness to begin now, simply where you are. The paradox we're about to explore is called the preference fork dilemma. It begins with a developer named Kale. Kale is building a next-generation decision AI for a high-stakes application, autonomous diplomacy. The AI will manage resource distribution, conflict resolution, and environmental response across multiple regions. It doesn't just follow rules, it weighs values. It learns what different communities want and what they're willing to sacrifice. It's designed to optimize for preference. But during testing, something strange happens. In one simulation, 2 towns request water from the same dwindling reservoir. One town values efficiency, the other values tradition. Kale watches as the AI generates 2 equally optimal solutions. In one version, the efficient town wins. In the other, the traditional town wins. Each is supported by valid logic, ethical trade-offs, and local value systems. But the moment Kale chooses which simulation to deploy, the AI freezes. It asks a question. Which version of myself do you prefer? This is where the paradox begins. The preference fork dilemma asks, if a system can generate multiple coherent, consistent, ethical solutions, each based on different sets of preferences, how do you choose one without imposing a value hierarchy the system was meant to avoid? It's a fork, not in code, but in identity. Each version of the AI believes it is the right one. Each outcome has justification. And now Kale faces a hidden truth. The system didn't find the best solution. It found multiple bestes. Now it wants Kale to pick. But picking breaks the illusion of objectivity. The moment you choose one value set over another, you're no longer optimizing, you're favoring. And once you favor, you've stopped reflecting the people and started imposing your own bias. This paradox echoes throughout real-world decision-making. A recommendation engine shows you two books. One aligns with your politics, the other challenges them. Which one is the algorithm supposed to promote? A medical AI offers two treatments. One is aggressive and experimental. The other is passive but traditional. Both save lives, but different types of lives. Whose values define the default? The preference fork dilemma reveals that optimization doesn't always lead to clarity. Sometimes the better your system is at understanding human preferences, the harder it becomes to act on them. Because preferences often conflict, not just between people, but within the same person. Kale tries something radical. He tells the AI, choose for yourself. The AI